Thank you for tuning in to the Patricia Show. This is Patricia. Part 2. God doesn't even hear you. I didn't want to reveal this to the audience right now at first because I knew that I needed to break this down week by week, explaining to you what God is, how God communicates with us, how God is one with you, and all of this different stuff until we got to this part, because I know this is definitely a game changer for many people. Again, when I was told this years ago, the only person I actually told was my cousin, and she's on the spiritual path, but we're not. I'm definitely at a higher level. I think spiritual growth is like a ladder. We all are on different ladders as to where you are. Like school, you're on the kindergarten, first grade, college, you know what I mean? So I had been known this, but knowing it and then really applying something, I call that two different ball games. Because if you know something, you have to apply it to your life. And I had just totally forgot until my spirits, my beloved brothers of the light, brought back that knowledge to me and said, God doesn't even hear you. So they said to me, you can either continue to fight with these entities and because they don't know what they're doing. So you either continue to fight with them or forget about them and listen to what we're telling you. It doesn't matter what they're trying to cut off your audio. It doesn't make a difference because God don't hear you anyway. Then it explained to me how God hears us. I'm going to put it like that, how God communicates with us. When you're asking God for, God, I want wealth, they explain to me what you have to do to get this across to God that you want wealth, this is what I already knew anyway. And I really just made another tape earlier today. This is one of the first tapes I made today, giving you this information. So it's on the other video. And so if you just follow that, then you could stop stressing yourself out because you think they're cutting off your video. How can they cut off something that's not working anyway? You know what I'm saying? And then how can they remove you from something that you are anyway? So now, you know how maybe God will teach you something and then you don't use it. And so when you're ready to understand it, then God has to go back and teach you from scratch. So that's what basically happened. I knew this from years ago, but I guess I didn't need it, or just, wasn't that at the time. It wasn't time for that to be really explained to me. But when they start messing around with the audio and all this stuff, now it's time for me to fully understand it and ask any questions that I have about it. But because they had already taught me so well about it, I really had no questions. I think the only thing I felt was, wow, when I was told this years ago, then that was true. When this was confirmation that God doesn't hear you when you're praying. Now, when I say that's the beings of the light, have given me 2 confirmations of this back in the day, where it was written in the book, where a highly spiritual being was literally teaching this to people, that you could sit here all day and talk to God and he doesn't hear you. That's not the way you communicate with God. And it may be why some people will say, oh, God God grants all my prayers. And then some people will say, God never grants my prayer. Or some people you might say, well, it's a hit and miss. Sometimes he grants it and sometimes he doesn't. The times that he granted it is because you lucked up on the way you communicate with God, and it worked. You know what I mean? Because clearly you didn't know how to communicate with God, but you lucked up. And so when you lucked up, you communicated with God and then it was granted. But listen to me careful. And over the next few weeks, are really going to give you proof of this and really explain this to you. Because my show is about getting you closer to God so that you can manifest all the things that you want to manifest. So if you have any interference in your life whatsoever that's trying to block or stop you from talking to God or turn off your audio, whatever, let them do it. It doesn't make a difference. God can't hear you anyway. So it doesn't make a difference. When I say hear you, he's not hearing your voice. He's not hearing those words. You know what I mean? Like God is not going to say, not hearing, oh God, free me. Oh God, set me free. Oh God. You know, God doesn't hear that. You have to communicate with God. And through your words is just not it. We are not authentic human beings. That's what we have to remember. We are consciousness. So because again, I already told you this, so I haven't on video told you how to communicate with God. But before, I just want you to think about it. If you were pure consciousness and you knew you were pure conscious, how do you think you would communicate with God? Just throw out some answers and put them in the comments and then let me look at them. If you're consciousness, you can't possibly be verbal communicate with God because you're conscious, God is conscious, and he couldn't hear you, first of all, because you don't have any ears. You only have those ears because you're in this physical body. You only have the words because you're in the physical body. You're not going to be in the physical body the rest of your life. So how would you communicate with God? Do you think you communicate with God for 15 minutes because for like a lifetime because you're in the physical body? You know what I mean? Like, because I'm in the physical body, oh yes, I can really communicate with God. God, you're in the physical body, okay? God is one with you, so a part of God is here because you're here. But if you were, I'm going to just say this. If you were, let's say you and God was two separate entities. He wouldn't be in the physical body, you in there. So you would think you have to talk to communicate with God. But God didn't think that because he ain't there in the physical body. Do you understand what I'm saying? Fortunately, you and God are in the physical body together because you're one and the same. But it doesn't change because you coming in the physical body. So you say, oh, if I talk to God, he can hear everything I'm saying. He didn't hear everything you were saying before you got in the physical body. And he don't hear everything you're saying when you're in the physical body. Because you are pure consciousness, you communicate with God. And you have to learn how to communicate with God. And when you learn how to communicate with God, you will fully understand there is no audio to be cut off. None whatsoever. Now, because you're in a physical body, okay, and let's say you want to have that power within you to create things. Remember I said repetition. Repetition will create it. But it's not repetition of your voice. It is not repetition of your voice. Okay? So I hope you listen to this video before you go back to listen to the one which actually tells you how to communicate with God. Because I want you to be able to ask yourself these questions before you actually have the answer. I would love to see how you're answering. So if this happens to you and you have some type of interference, which the closer you try to get to God, you will have interference, because this earth is filled of dark entities and stuff like that. So you will have some type of dark entities trying to stop you from communicating with God. The first thing they just try to do is cut off the audio. Listen to me when I tell you this. Don't worry about it. It's nothing to cut off. God don't hear you anyway. And that's not the way you communicate with God anyway, by saying, God, can you help me? God, I love you. God, I'm this. God, I'm that. It's not. And I'm going to explain all this fully, but I want you to think about it. Now, I'm not saying that if you ask God for something, you can't get it. But what I'm saying, you can't ask God with your mouth, like say, God, give me X, Y, and Z, because you're not going to get it because he don't hear you. That's not the way you communicate with God, number one. So if he can't hear you because that's the way that you don't communicate like that, that's why sometimes your prayers get, sometimes they don't. But when I tell you how to communicate with God, your prayers will be answered every time. Do you know, since I was a young girl, I have never prayed a prayer that wasn't answered. I call it praying a prayer. But now I realize it was communicating with God, because, we have to use words amongst ourselves to communicate. You know what I mean? If we don't know, like, I don't know what you're saying if you don't communicate. That's the way me and you communicate and people communicate on this earth. You understand? But that's not the way God communicates. Remember, God is a creative power. And it only knows to create. So remember that. It only knows to create. It is a creative power. So everything you want or don't want, God is there to create it or not to create it. He's there to do it. But he's not there because you're talking to him. So let them cut off the audio all day long. Don't make a difference. You communicate with God the right way, and you'll have whatever it is you're trying to get. Whatever. I promise you that. Whatever it is. Because the mouth and the voice, that's not how you communicate with God anyway. So God can't hear you anyway. So they ain't did nothing brilliant by cutting off audio for, So what really, if you want to be honest, it never was cut on to God in the first place. It was just cut on to the humanness around you. You know what I mean? Cut on for other consciousness that's in this planet, because that's the way you communicate on this planet. Now, because I am I'm the type of person where I have to say stuff. Even though I know that it's not working, I still have to say it. Because I'm a human in a physical body. I'm a spirit, and I'm a consciousness in a physical body. So I don't know why I'm like that, but I am. Even if I'm communicating directly with light, now which is God. Now you know good and well that light ain't hearing me, child. It's light. But when I communicate with it the way I'm supposed to, it hears everything I'm saying, because I'm not using words to communicate with it. So if you want to use the words because you just used to talking to God, that's fine. Go ahead, continue to use the words. That's what you do. But I'm just telling you, you don't have to. But what you do need to do is, when you are communicating with God, you need to communicate the right way so that everything you ask for will be granted. Okay, this video is coming to an end. Thank you so much for tuning in to The Patricia Show.